Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. Sam Bushman, Lowell Nelson, campaignforliberty.org. On TV, on radio, hard-hitting talk, news the networks refuse to use. It all starts now. This is the broadcast for November the 17th of the year of our Lord 2025, promoting God, family, country, protecting life, liberty, and property. Lowell, welcome back, sir.
Good to be back, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, there's so much to talk about. It's not even funny. I want to talk, before we get into the details of the topics that you brought forward today, I want to talk a little bit about this Thomas Massie, Donald Trump fight. This is out of control, the Greene-Donald Trump fight. He's literally attacking Greene because she wanted to access the Epstein files, attacking Thomas Massie because he wants to access the Epstein files. Trump was for the Epstein files, then he was against the Epstein files, then he was for, then he's against. And in strange reversal now, Trump says, hey, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files. I don't know if he's schizophrenic, but I'm starting to completely lose faith in the Donald. Attacking Greene because she doesn't want to back Israel 100%. Attacking Greene because she wants the Epstein files, attacking Thomas Massie over a lot of the same issues. Now calling Thomas Massie Rand Paul Jr. Now he's attacking Rand Paul as well. And over what? Trump is attacking literally everybody that, in my opinion, has got it right. He's not touching Mike Johnson or anybody else that's not getting it right. Greene says she supports Trump despite the attacks, but Greene says, I'm now getting threats over Trump's feud. She says harassers are being egged on by the most powerful man in the world. Then, now Trump attacks Thomas Massie over his marriage. I guess his wife passed away. We don't know all the details, but there was an autopsy. It was a shock to everybody when she passed away at 51 years old. They have 4 children. They were married for like 30 plus years. Now Thomas Massie got remarried 16 months later. Trump's criticizing Massie for getting married, saying she'll wake up and realize she got married to a loser. I mean, Trump has lost his mind, Lowell.
Yeah, he's a big bully, Sam. Bullies, they don't bring substance to the argument. They just bring name-calling and, other things to an argument. It is sad because he does have a pretty big bully pulpit. But on the other hand, if you're Thomas Massie or Rand Paul or Marjorie Taylor Greene, you're in good company. The thing that Donald's doing is he's alienating much of his base. I mean, he's turned. Certainly the libertarians that voted for him are just angry and upset. They won't support him. There was one columnist that predicts that the midterms are going to go very badly for Republicans because of Trump. Because Trump is, demeaning Massie and Greene and Rand Paul. That the Republicans are going to lose the midterm elections. Now, typically, the sitting president does lose the midterms. That's pretty typical, but. Some people are predicting a much larger loss this time because Donald Trump has just gone off the deep end, and he's alienating many of the people who voted for him, supported him, got him into office this last go-round. And so it's pretty sad to see this happening. I think if Trump truly were, thinking politically, trying to be wise politically, he would not be going after these three because it truly is alienating much of his base.
And in my opinion, you cross the line, though, when you put Greene in the crosshairs like this, where now people are basically attacking Greene and putting her life in danger. You've crossed the line. And when it comes to Thomas Massie and you start to attack his personal life or a wife that hasn't been involved in politics and a situation where his wife passed away, and I mean, what? You've lost your mind. What is he doing?
Well, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just acting the bully, and if he understood, if he really was politically savvy, he would not be doing that. So on one hand, we appreciate Trump because he's unfiltered, and we get to see what he's really thinking. But on the other hand, because he's not politically savvy, he's hurting himself, he's hurting the MAGA movement, he's hurting Republicans, and most of all, and most importantly, he's hurting the very people in Congress who are standing up for the Constitution, which is what he ought to be doing, but sadly he's not doing.
All right. Well, Ron Paul wrote an incredible column saying exactly what I'm saying is we've got to stand up against Donald Trump on some of these issues, right?
That's right. While Dr. Ron Paul was serving in the U.S. House, when President Obama planned to send troops into Syria, there were many Republicans in the U.S. Senate who argued that he first must obtain approval from Congress before sending U.S. troops into combat.
And by the way, that's just and that's constitutional, right?
Absolutely right. But last week, when the Senate held a vote to remind President Trump that he is required to seek approval from Congress before launching an attack on Venezuela, there were only
hold on. Why just remind Trump? Why not move forward with articles of impeachment then? If he's acting outside of his scope and his lane and its constitutional authority, that's what criminals do, sir.
Yeah, absolutely right. There were only 2 Republican senators that stood up to defend the Constitution. So why was there only 2? Well, because these yahoos in Congress, they support the party instead of the Constitution. They're choosing party over principle is what they're doing, Sam. And how many times have you heard Congress critters, campaign for office? They'll say, I always, vote for, I uphold principle over party. You'll never see me, voting party over principle. And yet we see it in spades, term after term after term. And so that's what's happening here.
And the way the mainstream press says is they voted largely upon partisan lines.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they're just a bunch of yellow bellies, Sam. They really ought to vote with the Constitution, not with the president. That's who we want. We want people in Congress who will vote with the Constitution regardless of who the president is, regardless of what party the president represents. Well, Sam, there are only 2 only 2 Republican senators who voted with the Constitution on this particular issue last week. One was Rand Paul from Kentucky, and one was Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. Noticeably absent from that list of 2 was Mike Lee of Utah. Now, I would have expected him to vote with the Constitution, but no, he chose party over the Constitution. Very disappointing. So,
well, and how many Democrats voted against this? How many Democrats voted with Rand Paul and with Lisa Murkowski?
All of them. Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. Let's be very clear because I don't play games with partisan politics. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. The fact is the Democrats backed the Constitution and the Republicans did not, except for a couple of exceptions, which we just pointed out. Is that true?
That's true.
So the Democrats deserve some praise. Now you would say, well, Sam, they didn't do it for the right reasons. You know that. They just hate the Republic. I don't care. They did what was right. And would it be better to do the right thing for the right reasons? Absolutely. But is it better to do the right things for the wrong reasons than the wrong things for the wrong reasons? Yes. So let's give a little bit of credit where credit's due. We should have had more Republicans send a clear and decisive congressional, constitutional message to the President of the United States. Stay in your lane, buddy. You're out of control. You're out of line. Stay in your lane, sir. And the Democrats did that, and they deserve some credit for it, Lowell.
Yeah, I agree, Sam. Dr. Paul pretty much concludes his column with a history lesson, real short and sweet. He says this, quote, "We fought a war against King George III to negate the ability of a king to take the people to war on his whim. Now, Congress scrambles to abrogate that hard-fought achievement in the name of political expediency," end of quote. So Dr. Ron Paul, the wise old sage that he is, he wants people in Congress to vote with the Constitution regardless of who the president is. And I totally agree. We must hold...
And I want the president to stand with the Constitution so there's no daylight between the two. I want the Constitution and the president to be such in lockstep, such on the same page that it's easy. Not a conflict, not a battle, not a breakdown in trust or morality. I want the president to be so constitutional that voting for him becomes easy. Lowell?
Right on, Sam. And so if you live in Utah, then after the show today, please call John Curtis and Mike Lee's offices. Hold them accountable for their failure to vote with the Constitution. And if you have Republican senators anywhere in any state and you're listening to this show, then after the show, call them and express your disappointment in them. Sam?
Judge Napolitano coming up. He speaks out on this boldly, nobly independent week after week, and we're going to tell you about it in seconds on Liberty Roundtable Live with Lowell Nelson, campaignforliberty.org.
Looking for an IT partner that truly understands your needs? Managed IT Services is the answer. We meet with you regularly to discuss your goals and form a tailored technology plan. Our customers have called us a trusted advisor who delivers. When it comes to IT, we do it all. Firewalls, cloud storage, server migration, and more. Say goodbye to long-term contracts and hello to a team that earns your business month after month. Call 801-706-6980 now and let Managed IT Services transform your IT experience.
Have you ever had great honey? No, I mean really good, all-natural, raw honey? Well, now you can, thanks to localhoneyman.com. We can ship out our locally made honey all across the U.S. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Plus, Local Honeyman has so many different flavors, like Utah Wildflower, High Desert Delight, Happy Valley, and Blackberry, just to name a few. So purchase your delicious raw honey today at localhoneyman.com.
The Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit legal foundation committed to protecting our unalienable right to publicly acknowledge God. The Foundation for Moral Law exists to restore the knowledge of God in law and government and to acknowledge and defend the truth that man is endowed with rights not by our fellow man, but by God. The foundation maintains a twofold focus. First, litigation within state and federal courts. Second, education. Conducting seminars to teach the necessity and importance of acknowledging God in law and government. How can you help? Please make a tax-deductible contribution, allowing foundation attorneys to continue the fight. You may also purchase various foundation products as well at morallaw.org. Located in Montgomery, Alabama, the Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 founded by Judge Roy Moore. Please partner with us to achieve this important mission. morallaw.org.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Liberty Roundtable Live. My name is Lowell Nelson. I'm riding shotgun this morning with your host, Sam Bushman. Andrew Napolitano comes out with another great column entitled, Can the President Disrupt Free Speech? Well, that's an important question because that's what he is doing. You know,
and we ought to say, should the president be allowed to? I mean, I understand the can word, but yes, he can and he does oftentimes. But should he, and is he constitutionally allowed to, right?
Yeah, and that's what Napolitano gets into. Does he have the legal or the moral authority to do so? And basically the answer is no. But Judge Knapp talks a little bit about the history that preceded President Trump's, trying to disrupt free speech. Started with President Woodrow Wilson, who arrested people who were critical of U.S. involvement in World War I. Wilson's Department of Justice persuaded the courts that bad tendency speech could be prosecuted. Now, what is this bad tendency speech thing? Well, it is speech that might tend to violence. And American jurisprudence permitted
like
the
attacking Greene, you mean? That kind of speech?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the bad tendency speech. American jurisprudence permitted the government to prosecute bad tendency speech for about 5 decades, from Woodrow Wilson down to 1969. Now, what happened in 1969? Well, the Supreme Court took a case called the Brandenburg versus Ohio case, and they unanimously rejected judicially sanctioned suppression of free speech. And in doing that, they articulated the modern or the current understanding of free speech. And this is the understanding that Judge Knapp has been talking about for the past 12 months. It is this, quote, all innocuous speech is protected from prosecution, and all speech is innocuous when there is time for more speech to challenge it. The Brandenburg ruling has been upheld numerous times, as recently as just last year by the current Supreme Court. It basically unleashes public speakers to say whatever they wish, even to advocate violence, so long as there is time for other speech to challenge the speaker, end of quote. Well, you know, while the whole country was worried about the shutdown this past month, Trump issued National Security Presidential Memorandum 7. Now, that memo would turn the Brandenburg decision on its head and reinstate Woodrow Wilson's policy of the suppression of free speech. And so what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, we got the executive branch saying one thing, meaning they want to suppress free speech, while the judicial branch is saying something else. Do not suppress free speech. And this raises a number of constitutional issues, which Judge Knapp gets into. First, in order to disrupt speech, the government must evaluate the content of the speech, which is forbidden by Brandenburg decision. Judge Knapp writes this, quote, the whole purpose of the First Amendment is to encourage, foster, and protect open, wide, robust, caustic, hateful, even incendiary speech about the personnel and policies of the government, end of quote. Right? So if Trump's memo is allowed to stand, then the First Amendment is undermined. Secondly, Trump's memo assumes that the general government has a role in law enforcement. But, Judge Knapp says, quote, this too is ahistorical and unconstitutional. There is no constitutional basis for federal law enforcement. Public safety was reserved by the states as their area of governance when they joined the Union, and that reservation is articulated in the 10th Amendment, end of quote. Thirdly, Trump's memo attacks ideas, and ideas may be harbored by anyone and expressed at any time, whether in speech or in writing. So Napolitano concludes his column this way, folks, quote, there is no such thing in law as a domestic terrorist organization. So the labeling of Antifa is is thus legally moot, but terrifying. The terror is a direct line from killing folks in boats on the high seas because someone in government thinks they might be able to commit a crime or might be about to commit a crime, and disrupting constitutionally protected speech in America because someone in government thinks the speech might produce violence, end of quote. Well, it's a great column, Sam, because, again, he's talking about due process, he's talking about the freedom of speech, and the fact that we should be able to criticize our government in whatsoever way we want to, as long as there is also time for other people to speak out in opposition to the speech that is given. So I really like this column, and I really like the fact that Napolitano is standing up for free speech, despite the fact that we have a president who is using, he is using the Department of Justice to shut down free speech. He's using law enforcement to shut it down in the states where he has no business doing that. Sam?
And Josh Phillip over at Epoch Times, he does the program called Crossroads, just highlighted this fact. The U.S. makes Antifa terror designation official.
Yeah.
And I am not for Antifa. I think they do a lot of damage. But I'm the kind of guy that I don't want to look at what someone says or what someone thinks and become the, judge, jury, and executioner or the thought police. If they've committed violent acts or crimes, prosecute them to the full extent of the law. If they say things that we don't like, Donald literally is putting Miss Greene in harm's way right now. President Trump's attacks need to stop on Thomas Massie and his poor dear wife that's done nothing, for crying out loud. Okay, but I respect President Trump's ability to say what he wants, but same with Antifa. And you know what? I'm not convinced Antifa's my friend, but I'm also not so convinced they're as big of an enemy as we think. They're just taking orders from someone above them. Who's funding Antifa? Who's giving them the money? See, we bring up George Soros, and Trump will be like, oh, leave George alone. Come on. See, we're not getting to the bottom of any of these real issues. We're just, discussing it in very generic terms. Trump wants to designate this because then he looks like he's hard on crime. And then the Antifa people want to get crazy and say Trump's a lunatic. And then it's, oh, you've got Trump derangement syndrome. And then it's like, we need men and women of good moral character to put the interests of their constituents and their country before their political party and before their president. Judge Knapp is spot on. Ron Paul is spot on when we talk about these things. Whatever happened to due process in America, Lowell? It's simply going by the wayside under Republican leadership, for crying out loud.
You got that right, Sam. And it's up to us, the citizenry, to hold these people accountable. That's you and me, folks. That's us, the people. We, the people, must hold them accountable. And that's why I'm recommending that after this show's over, you call your U.S. senator, unless Rand Paul is your senator. So I'm not saying Kentucky needs to do this. Well, I guess Kentucky needs to call their other senator besides Rand Paul. But you can thank Rand for standing up for the Constitution. But we need to hold these yahoos accountable for their failure to stand with the Constitution on this. And if we'll do that, if we can raise citizens' awareness of this problem and get them talking to, just melt the phone lines down into Congress, it will make a difference, and we'll find, that Congress will suddenly have a little more backbone than they had previously. But they
haven't done a whole lot in the last 10 months that I've seen of any value. They haven't even bumped back the good things Trump's done. Why Donald Trump isn't attacking Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, for getting nothing done, he's attacking these other people, is just beyond my comprehension. However, there's a good question being asked by our dear buddy Jacob Hornberger over at, I guess he's at Ron Paul's website this time, right?
Yeah, ronpaulinstitute.org. Mm-hmm.
And he's asking an incredible question. Why don't you ask this question, then we'll take a break and talk about it.
Yeah, the questions he asked, just a couple of them. Where does the U.S. have any authority for another country's drug policy, right? And then why has the U.S. regime failed to halt the possession and distribution of drugs in our own country? Is it possible that such behavior cannot be enforced out of existence? Important questions, Sam. We need to dig into them and talk about them after the break, but...
And the quintessential question is this. He says this: who died and made Trump the global drug war king, right? Mm-hmm. In other words, hey, think about this for a second, ladies and gentlemen. Let's say there's drugs in Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Whose problem are they?
Not mine.
Venezuelans? Yeah. There's drugs in Russia, China, wherever. Whose problems are they? China's? Russia's? If there's drugs in America, whose problem are they? Americans. Okay. So why are we trying to attack these people around the world and attack these governments around the world and act like they're the drug problem? Is China making drugs? Is China using fentanyl to infiltrate the United States? Absolutely. But who's funding China? Oh, we are? Yeah. So does that make any sense, ladies and gentlemen? Let's come back and break this down. I think Hornberger is spot on this one as well. The war on drugs has been an absolute dismal failure. You want the proof? There's drugs everywhere in America, and the cartels are getting stronger by the day. Lowell Nelson's with me, campaignforliberty.org. I'm Sam Bushman, syndicated by Loving Liberty Networks, lovingliberty.net, campaignforliberty.org. Quick pause, more in seconds. On TV.
proclaiming liberty across the land. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
News this hour from Town Hall. I'm Greg Clugston in Washington. Airlines are resuming their normal schedules now that the commercial flight restrictions imposed during the government shutdown have been lifted.
As of 6 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, airlines have the green light to resume regular flight schedules following a joint announcement from Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy and FAA Administrator Brian Bedford. During 10 days of restrictions, 40 major hubs were impacted in the U.S., including New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Atlanta, due to safety concerns from staffing shortages and long hours at air traffic control facilities. The restrictions affected thousands of flights across the country over that time. George Williams reporting.
President Trump has ended U.S. tariffs on beef, coffee, fruit, and other food items that have become more expensive. He even admitted to reporters that in some cases tariffs may increase consumer prices. It remains to be seen if or by how much prices are affected by the move. Meanwhile, economist Steve Moore says lowering the cost of living will take some time.
I think it'll take another 6 to 9 months for Trump to fix this problem because it's embedded in the system, just like it took Reagan about 2 years to fix the inflation problem that he inherited from Jimmy Carter back 40 years ago.
Moore was interviewed on the Salem Radio Network. President Trump has backtracked in his fight with Republicans over the Jeffrey Epstein files. He now says there's nothing to hide and that House GOP lawmakers should vote to release the information. The president's reversal comes as 100 Republicans or more in the House are set to back the Epstein bill. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says it's time to formally investigate the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack, but he's angered many in Israel by appointing a government committee, not an independent one. More at townhall.com.
Hey, it's Mike Gallagher, host of The Mike Gallagher Show. I don't mess around when it comes to saving you money. Right now, rates have dropped to the lowest level in over a year and a half. That means if you bought your home or refinanced in the last 3 years, you could be saving hundreds of dollars every month. Lower your rate, lower your monthly payment, even kick that pesky PMI to the curb. And get this, you can skip 2 full months of mortgage payments. But that's not all. Fellowship Home Loans just rolled out something incredible. Their very own HELOC and lines of credit. Approval in just 5 minutes. Money in your account in as little as 4 days. It's the easiest system you've ever used. You can do it yourself online. Whether you want to pay off bills, tackle a home project, cover education, or even a wedding, Fellowship Home Loans makes it simple to leverage the money that's already sitting in your house. Just go to fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G, fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G, or call 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-6453. Fellowship Home Loans, mortgage lending guided by the book.
Nationwide Mortgage Bankers, DBA Fellowship Home Loans, equal housing lender, NMLS number 819382.
The runner on third takes a short lead. Elwood glances over. Now back to the plate. He sets the pitch. It's swung on strike 3. They've won it. They have won it. World champions. Jim, what's it like down on the field?
John, it's a madhouse down here. I'm trying to get to Bob Elwood, the winning pitcher. Bob, how does it feel winning the 7th game on a strikeout?
Yeah, I thought he'd be looking for a slider, so I came on with my fastball.
World champions! Is this the greatest moment of your life?
Absolutely not. Jim, the best moments for me are breakfast with the kids, long walks with my wife, just holding her hand, you know?
Marriage. You're never too far apart when you're still holding hands. From your neighbors, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Jim, when was the last time you held your wife's hand?
Well, it's been a while.
I tell you, you need to step up to the plate, Jim.
For more tips on strengthening your marriage, visit family.mormon.org.
As you are aware, America is divided over every fault line possible. This is intentionally fostered by those who do not love God, family, or country. We believe a peaceful future as a free people absolutely depends on civility. Clarion Call for Civility is looking for funding and volunteers at every level to make our hopes and efforts a reality. Please donate, sign our pledge, and help us in our sacred cause. Please visit callforcivility.com for more details. Callforcivility.com.
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of LNR's hard-hitting news and podcasts at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at LibertyNewsRadio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. LibertyNewsRadio.com.
We're discussing this reality check with our dear friend Lowell Nelson at campaignforliberty.org, ladies and gentlemen. The U.S. government has been waging its unconstitutional, failed drug war for decades, ladies and gentlemen. It has basically cracked down with asset forfeiture laws, absolutely unconstitutional. Mandatory minimum sentences, again, unconstitutional as all get out. Warrantless searches and seizures, violent no-knock raids, unconstitutional as all get out, racial discrimination enforcement, not to mention the endless stream of record drug busts, they claim, that'll stop it. But every time they have a drug bust, there's just an exponentially increased amount of drugs. Never-ending indictments and prosecutions, long unending jail sentences, exorbitant fines, not to mention now drug war assassinations of people on the high seas outside of the territorial waters of the United States of America. This is all conducted by Donald without Congress. Lowell?
Yeah, sad, unfortunate perversion of an undermining, really, of our Constitution. Like Ron Paul said in his column earlier, you know, we fought a war with King George III to get away from a king that would take us to war without the approval of the people, as represented by members of the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. And yet, these Congress critters, the yellow-bellied Congress critters we have, allow our president to just willy-nilly, you know, start wars or start, you know, shooting people, bombing people, obliterating them, you know. And I was reading just the other day, Sam, this idea that a speedboat from Venezuela, you know, on its way to the United States with drugs, it's impossible. You cannot put enough
hold on.
gasoline.
How do we know that it's on its way to the United States anyway?
Yeah, we don't know. We simply don't know. We're making an assumption.
Just saying.
Yeah, you're exactly right. But even if we did think that they were headed to the United States, we know they can't make it because you can't put enough gasoline on a speedboat to get them from Venezuela to the U.S. You know, to Florida. It's just impossible. It's too far.
Well, and if it is true, can't we wait till they're in territorial waters of the United States and then capture them?
Oh, absolutely. And
couldn't Congress provide guidance and direction on how to get that done and the funding to make that happen? And couldn't we bring this above board and educate the American citizens and use the checks and balances in the Constitution to do it right, if you will?
Yeah, we certainly could, Sam, if we had some courageous people in Congress, you know, some people with courage. Well, and I think to some extent, I think Rand is doing that. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing that. Thomas Massie certainly is doing that, which is why they're in the crosshairs of the president, because he doesn't want, you know, he doesn't want to have to follow the Constitution. He doesn't want to be hobbled with the Constitution. But that's exactly what Jefferson said. We need to chain people down by, you know, we need to chain them down with the chains of the Constitution. That's how we, you know, they knew that the natural man, you know, people were just, you know, they were prone to exercise power and that it would corrupt them. That's our nature. That's what happens.
You know, the President of the United States should understand the Constitution. He actually swears an oath to uphold it. And he should look at the Constitution as his friend and his protection. Shouldn't he?
Well, he should, and he would if the House would impeach a president who colors outside the lines. If we have a president who thumbs his nose at the Constitution and, you know, starts waging war on another country, like Mexico or Colombia or Venezuela, like he's you know, talking about doing, without the congressional approval, he ought to be impeached, right? I mean, if he even, you know, orders the military, and he's done this, by the way. The Navy has I think obliterated 19 speedboats amounting to about 75 people or something so far.
Yeah, we're closer to 100 now, but yeah.
Yeah, and so he has demonstrated that he did not get a letter of marque and reprisal from Congress. There's no such thing. He did not get a declaration of war from Congress. No such thing yet. And so his action is an impeachable offense. He should be impeached over this, Sam. And
Amen. But Donald should be listening to me and you for sure. And he needs to stop. This war on drugs has got to stop. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not advocating for drugs. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not defending Venezuela. All I'm talking about is internal to the United States, if we want to make America first. I'm talking about the president obeying the supreme law of the land and staying in his lane. And if there's legitimate reason to do what he wants to accomplish, by all means, bring Congress into the mix, dot the I's, cross the T's, get her done, Donald. I'm not against you one bit. But when you don't do it right, I have a problem with it. When you don't obey the law and you don't carry out your constitutional responsibilities, which you've sworn an oath to uphold, then I kind of have a problem with it. Maybe he needs to start listening to Pat Buchanan more, Lowell.
Well, I really liked your list of failures before we get to Pat Buchanan, because Jacob Hornberger would agree with you 100% on this. The list of failed programs, or the way we crack down on drugs, right, and with asset forfeiture laws and so forth. That list that you gave at the outset of our conversation here, this segment, is exactly why we should end the war on drugs. See, that's evidence of our failure to control drugs in our own country. Well, I got news for you, and Jacob Bornberger has news for us, folks. None of this has worked to prevent American consumers from ingesting what they want to ingest. But one thing he writes is clear and indisputable. The U.S. drug war has brought massive death, destruction, and loss of liberty in both Latin America and the United States. End of quote. Well, I mean, that's absolutely true. When I was younger, 20, 30, 40 years ago, Sam, I was in favor of the drug war. And, I was glad that we had laws against, the possession and the distribution of drugs. But now my attitude has changed on this. I look at Mexico, for example, the drug lords there, they just murdered a mayor of some city a couple of weeks ago down there, simply because the mayor decided he was going to wage war on drugs in his town, right? He was going to clean up the town. Well, it's terribly unfortunate, but that ended his life because the drug lords took him out. And, you'll always have black markets. You always will have a black market in drugs. And so are you and I going to change our habits, Sam? Are we going to start using drugs simply if they become legal? Well, absolutely not. You and I are going to... Well,
and we can also have a no man's land, too. We don't have to make drugs illegal, but we don't have to make them legal either. So the idea is, as long as you're doing drugs in your own house or doing whatever you do privately and you're not affecting or violating anybody else's rights, don't care. On the other hand, you start to violate somebody else's rights or act out in some way that violates the laws of our land, we will prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. It's that simple. So we don't have to make drugs illegal or legal. I think that's the false argument, that we've always got to make something against the law or for the law by the government. Why does the federal government even have to be involved in it at all? There's no drug license or control or authority granted constitutionally anywhere. Lowell?
Well, and if you look at history, Sam, when the prohibition, Amendment 21 was passed, ending the prohibition of alcohol, the manufactured, distribution, and sale of alcohol, once that ended, then the organized crime just disappeared. And so we had these agencies of the federal government. They had a lot of firepower and manpower, and they didn't have anything to do because organized crime went away with the end of prohibition, right? And so they invented the war on drugs. They said, well, let's name marijuana. Let's call it the bad boy, and let's go after anybody who traffics marijuana. So the real reason for the war on drugs, Sam, is not because they want to get rid of the drugs. It's because they need a reason to exist. These agencies with their guns and their firepower and their manpower, right? That's why they exist. That's why we have a war on drugs, so that gives them a reason to exist. Well, we don't need them.
And if we've locked down the border like we're told, aren't we told that we've locked down the border by Donald?
Yeah.
So we don't have a drug problem then if it's all coming in from the border, right?
It's got to be coming in somehow, yeah. And
if we've locked down our borders, there's no drugs coming in, Lowell. You can't have it both ways. Either there's drugs coming in and it's a problem, we haven't locked down the borders, or we have locked down the borders and they're not coming in. Which is it? See, where's candid people to ask those kind of questions? Nowhere to be found, it doesn't seem to me.
Well, and Liberty
you can't say the border's
Live.
locked down, but drugs are coming in. How does that work? Do they come in all by themselves? Does a marijuana plant just roll in, like a tumbleweed, just roll across the border? I mean, come on.
You're just making too much sense, Sam.
It just makes me mad because we're led around by the nose when they just put a hook in our nose and lead us around from stupid topic to stupid topic. Now, again, I'm not for drugs, but why is marijuana like the end of the world drug when they act like it's like PCP? At the same time, alcohol is legal for all the governments to get tons of money on. In Utah, they even have government-controlled known liquor stores. They participate in the filthy lucre. It's a disgrace. All right, let's praise Pat Buchanan. He deserves it. We'll do it in seconds. There's a lot of people really trying to make some real advancements on Pat Buchanan and give him some standing in the world. He's one who deserves it. I'll tell you that right now.
Cybercrime is exploding. Take Sarah from Sweet Delights, whose world crumbled after having to close with not being able to bounce back. Small businesses are prime targets, but the right strategies can keep yours safe. Jay Hill, CEO of Network Providers, has co-authored The Cyber Playbook Simplifies Cybersecurity for Business Owners with Strategies to avoid costly breaches and fines. Build a strong cyber attack response. Secure your business with key protections. Cyber threats aren't slowing down, but you can stay ahead. Protect your business. Ensure its security for tomorrow. Get the Cyber Playbook today at networkprovidersinc.com/cyber-playbook or call 385-446-5500 now.
Introducing Managed IT Services from NPI. We offer top-notch data backup and recovery, email spam protection, and network security tailored to your needs and budget. With 20-plus years of experience in the medical field, our HIPAA-certified consultants know what it takes to protect sensitive information. Don't settle for less. Give us a call at 801-706-6980 and experience the difference with Managed IT Services. Remember, your IT support should be fast, efficient, and reliable.
Introducing PrepStartsNow.com, your ultimate guide to readiness and peace of mind. We offer practical preparedness tools, training, and education to take your family's household readiness to the next level. Browse the prep shop for essential products, check out our planning guides, and stay informed with our prep blog. Visit PrepStartsNow.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive offers, new products, and future events. Remember, preparedness begins with PrepStartsNow.com.
Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Lowell Nelson here again with Sam Bushman, your host on Liberty Roundtable Live. Pat Buchanan, boy, is he ever a marvelous man. A lot of great years of service to the country. I like to talk about Ron Paul all the time, and I do so for a lot of reasons, good reasons. But today I want to bring into the conversation another gentleman, Pat Buchanan. Lou Rockwell wrote a column about Pat Buchanan last week, and Lou calls him, talking about Pat Buchanan now, Lou calls him, quote, a remarkable figure in American politics. Pat is a hero because he spoke truth to power, politically challenged the corrupt U.S. uniparty system when he ran for president 3 times, defended the sovereignty of America, and warned us about the collapse of Western civilization, end of quote. So there's that's the beginning of his awesome column about Pat. A number of people are asking President Trump now to award Pat with the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
And I'm one of them, Lowell.
Yeah, me too, Sam. I don't know, Pat Buchanan, I didn't know a whole lot about him, but, the
guy's an American hero. I got to know Pat Buchanan back in the early days when I used to work for Chuck Harder. This was in the early 90s and stuff like that, and Pat was standing tall, and his sister, Baby Buchanan, did a show with the radio network that I was involved with and everything else. And all I'm telling you is Pat's been a hero of mine ever since.
That's so cool. He according, just quoting some more of Lou Rockwell's, this is evidence of how great Pat is. He writes this, quote, Pat Buchanan is a towering figure in American statesmanship, 6 decades of public service. From his early days as a young speechwriter for Richard Nixon to his hard-charging campaigns for the presidency would alone qualify him for the nation's highest honor. But what sets Buchanan apart is that he foresaw, long before others, nearly every political crisis and cultural challenge that animates the country today. Buchanan warned us that mass migration would erode our national identity, that reckless interventions abroad would sap our strength. His speeches read like prophecy. His famous culture war address to the 1992 Republican National Convention warned of the relentless advance of the left's social agenda, abortion on demand, the degradation of religious liberty, women in combat units, and the redefinition of the family, end of quote. Now, I realize that's a long quote, Sam, but I just wanted to get out there the reasons why, the evidence, why Pat Buchanan is so important in the political constellation here in America. Lou recognizes that he and Pat Buchanan don't agree on every issue, of course, but they do agree on support for peace. And, Pat has never wavered on that. Pat has always supported peace, and that's one of the most important things we can expect of a president, is his stance. What is his foreign policy, right? That's one of the most important things we can do to gauge the value or the value of a president. I guess the value of his position. Where does he stand on foreign policy? Now, Lou quotes Murray Rothbard, quote, "It is legitimate to use violence against criminals in defense of one's right of person and property. It is completely impermissible to violate the rights of other innocent people. War, then, is only proper when the exercise of violence is rigorously limited to the individual criminals," end of quote. Well, turns out that Pat Buchanan, he opposed the war in Ukraine. He opposed nuclear confrontation with Russia. He opposes a confrontation with China. And he opposes American involvement in the Middle East. He's against the Iraq War, sanctions, and attacks on Iran, and aid to Israel or any other country in that region. He has not hesitated to condemn the neocon warmongers becoming the target of their hate, right? That's the retribution. And boy, if you call out the warmongers, you become the target of their hate. Well, that's what Pat did, and that's why he is the target of hate from the neocon warmongers. So, Sam, this is a ringing endorsement of Pat Buchanan, why he ought to be recognized and honored for the way he has stood up for the Constitution on almost every front. But especially
literally, Pat Buchanan was Donald Trump before Donald was Donald. He was Pat Buchanan was Charlie Kirk before Charlie Kirk was Charlie Kirk. I mean, it really goes down the list. And instead of attacking Greene and Massie and Paul and everybody else, President Trump, why don't you get on this, man? Why don't you focus on helping Pat Buchanan receive the Medal of Freedom Award? I mean, this guy deserves it big time. He stood tall for liberty his whole life. He's written books about it. He's been prophetic in his warnings and his counsel and his guidance. He used to be a speechwriter for Nixon all the way through running for president himself in 2000. I mean, the guy's just a hero, and he really, he was basically the forerunner for Trump. And, it was Ron Paul and Pat Buchanan, the two men that really set the stage for everything that we're seeing now, to be honest with you. Anyway, our prayers are that happens yesterday. But, Lowell, we need to focus on this last topic for Americans to really understand. It's all about sleep.
Yeah, this kind of comes out of the blue, I suppose, this little article. But I liked it because it's something that I struggle with, Sam. I don't get to bed early enough, even though my good mother always said 2 hours of sleep I'm sorry, hours of sleep before midnight is worth twice as much after midnight, right? So it's really important to get to bed early and then to get up early instead of going to bed late and getting up late, right? And I never really understood why that's the case, but then the Epoch Times came out with this article about the brain and how, what it does when you sleep, and I found this very interesting, fascinating actually. This article says that while you sleep, your brain cells shrink by about 50%. And now I'm not talking about the whole time you're asleep. I'm talking about a specific segment of time within your 90-second sleep cycle, right? You've got a cycle of sleep. I'm sorry, 90 minutes. Yeah, thank you. 90 minutes, and during that cycle, there's a small segment or fraction of that cycle. It might be 15 minutes long or whatever, but it varies with people. But during that, we'll just call it 15-minute chunk of time during your normal sleep cycle, your brain cells shrink by about 50%. Now, why do they shrink? Well, that apparently it allows cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely through the brain to sweep away the toxins that have accumulated there during the day. Holy cow, this is really kind of like the body's lymphatic system. And the toxins that are mentioned are what they call beta amyloid and tau proteins. I've never heard those before, but apparently that's what they are, the toxins in the brain. And so this is the brain's plumbing system, essentially. The brain cells shrink, the cerebrospinal fluid, it makes it more easy or easier flow of that fluid through the brain in and around and amongst these brain cells. And so it flushes from the brain those toxins. And that
this
allows
is called the glymphatic system, ladies and gentlemen, not the lymphatic, the glymphatic system. It was discovered in 2012. This is relatively new science, Lowell.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And so when you're sleeping, your system, this system of cleansing the brain only occurs when you're sleeping. It only works at nighttime, right, while you're sleeping. So, anytime you're sleeping, I guess. And so this is what happens. And so the brain isn't just, sitting idle while you sleep. It's busy cleaning itself. So if you don't go to sleep regularly, these toxins build up in the brain. And this buildup.
And even if you don't sleep well, that happens.
Yeah. And so you get this brain fog going on, and you're not able to think as clearly. You're not able to, and the brain isn't able to function up to its full potential either. And of course, the brain controls all activities of the body. Every organ in the body is controlled by the brain. So it's very important to have a clean brain.
And they say poor sleep practices have increased, with a Gallup poll from 2023 showing that only 42% of Americans feel like they get enough sleep. We need lifestyle changes, including managing sleep chemicals and sleep, get away from screens before you go to sleep, and aligning sleep with your natural circadian rhythm and adopting better sleep postures. Incredible. Can optimize this glymphatic system and improve its efficiency. Some people say it can lead to Alzheimer's if you don't do this, and it can lead to all kinds of anger and mood problems and frustration and disappointment, discouragement. I mean, all of these things we never really attribute it to this stuff, Lowell, and we need to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just take this as a wake-up call, folks, and I'm trying to, I've read this article.
Actually, take this as a sleep call, ladies and gentlemen, not a wake-up call.
Yeah, a wake-up call to go to sleep on time.
Yes, sir. Amen.
This is, yeah. So don't think of sleep as a waste of time, folks. Sleep is so important, and hours before midnight, they're worth twice as much as hours after midnight. So let's get to sleep, folks, and clean your brain. Sam?
A lot of people think sleep is something that's just optional when you have time, nothing better to do. I'm telling you right now, you need to put sleep as one of the top things on your schedule. Don't oversleep, though. You can always take a good thing and you can drink too much water, too. That doesn't change the fact that most of us need more water, most of us need more sleep, most of us need better nutrition, less stress. Come on, let's do it. This is Liberty Roundtable Live. We keep an eye on all issues that relate to you and your life. Thank you, Lowell Nelson, campaignforliberty.org. I'm Sam Bushman. Liberty Roundtable is syndicated by the Loving Liberty Networks, lovingliberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save the United States of America.